You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to What's the T-Bev, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN. I'm your host, Christos. What's the T-Bev is a podcast where I interview members of the LGBTQIA+ community and our allies. We get to know our guest Trekdom and discuss current Trek news and speculation. Remember, you can watch What's the T-Bev on our YouTube channel of the same name or listen wherever you get your BQN podcast. Welcome to mid-June of Pride Month 2023. Things are moving right along as we are leading up to the season 2 premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. At the time of the recording, we are just 3 or 4 days away, and many Trek fans have seen the premiere last night in New York City, and we'll be hearing more about that from our guest, Mr. Jack Tracy. Hey, Jack, how are you?
That's an air horn. Hi, everybody. Yes, I was at the premiere, and it was great.
Awesome. So, Jack, you actually host a podcast of your own called Star Trek Zhuzherations, which I am really... Yes, I am a fan of. Well, you want to tell us a little bit about that podcast?
Sure. So we're now in our 3rd season. Zhuzh, Z-H-U-Z-H, which no one can pronounce, spell, say, I have found is the bane of my existence of naming it this. To zhuzh, as all of our LGBTQ people know, is to fix something up, to make it a little better. So we like to take some episodes of Star Trek that are a little and fix them up a bit. So right now, the 1st season I hosted with Trek Culture's Sean Farrick. The 2nd season and 3rd season we have rotating friends, and Christos will be joining us for Symbiosis, because this season we are doing all 6 episodes of season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. There are 2 out at the time of recording. The Farpoint, we're going in order, so Farpoint and Naked Now. It's comedic. We rip into the episodes. We talk about what works, what really didn't work. We have some behind the scenes stuff that we pull from the internet. And then my host and I both try to pitch each other on what we would have done differently had we gotten a hold of the script.
Yeah. What a good season to pick, because
yeah.
I mean, Star Trek: The Next Generation started out with the best of intentions, but it definitely has had its struggles in season 1. And I even want to say, like, people think season 2 was an improvement. I'm like, was it really? I mean, they were really, like, by season 2, taking scripts from what was supposed to be Star Trek 2, that was supposed to be shot 10 years prior before they made Star Trek the motion picture. Like, literally that episode, The Child, the one where the little space light knocks up Deanna. I mean, that was a Star Trek Phase 2 script, just modified to fit.
Well, Decker and Ilya are Riker and Deanna. That's where they came from.
Yes, exactly. And and don't even get me started on fitting in Pulowski there and how that didn't work. So, and then of course it all accumulates in shades of gray. So season 2, I think, is worse than season 1. But season 1, yes, I'm looking forward to talking to you about Symbiosis, because I have talked about that episode before, and I would judge the hell out of that, because I got some bones to pick with that episode. We actually stole a little bit of your format a week or 2 ago on All Good Things, as we were talking about LGBTQ representation in Star Trek, and we all had to zhuzh a little like a little 2-minute zhuzh of episode or a character or something. And my zhuzh was the host, the Beverly Crusher first Trill episode. And like, I mean, there's good things there, and then some of the ending is problematic. So listeners, that would have been like All Good Things 123 or 124. Check it out.
I saw
Cool.
a comment, I think it was on Twitter from Gates, who said that she thought it would have been more interesting if the Trill went into Troy.
Yeah. But
she
like,
said, wouldn't you have liked to seen that?
Well, yeah, and then everything they did with the Trill in that episode got retconned. Like, you don't put Trill in other beings, or you're not allowed to have a relationship with past relationships of the prior hosts, and like things like that. Like, that all got retconned in DS9. So it was almost like retconning a retcon, zhuzhing a retcon. I don't know.
But then they put a Trill and a human in Discovery.
They did. Well, yeah. That didn't they have to, though? Wasn't that the part in Discovery? Like, it was like the same thing. There's nobody here. It's this or nothing, or let the symbiote die.
Yeah, but there was no reason for it to be. It was not important that it was a human. It should have just been another Trill. There was no reason that it couldn't have been it was an Ezri situation, because Ezri got dacked because the ship that was ferrying it got attacked. So like, it could have been the same. There was nothing that, in my view, that made the character who got it like, oh, and they're human and that's important. Like, it wasn't important.
Yeah, and then like, there's this whole book that came out last year about Dax and Kira. It's literally on the bookshelf behind me.
Oh,
Revenant. It's called Revenant, and it literally, like, this whole idea that only the top whatever percent of Trill hosts can actually be Trill hosts. It's like all bullshit. It's all just like societal scam. So
they did that in an episode.
Really,
they did that in an Ezri episode where they find that out. Yeah.
But it really goes deep into that. Yeah.
I know we're getting off topic because we're two Trek fans and we just talk whatever comes to our mind about Trek. But one last thing off topic is, I was just on the captain's couch with Captain Jeremiah talking about State of Flux, and I didn't know Martha Hackett auditioned for Jadzia, and that's how she got into the Star Trek world, and they started bringing her in, and her first role was a cut piece of All Good Things. She played a Torellian captain in a plotline that was axed.
All right, so let's get into our main topic, which is Trekking to Know You. This is where I ask a bunch of questions that are the same every week, only to provide uniformity. And we find out a whole lot more about Jack based on his answers and Jack's love of Star Trek. I have a blast with this every time because nobody does the same thing. And I'm fortunate enough that even though I listen to your podcast, I feel like you're so all over the place in a good way that I don't know how you're going to answer any of this. So I love it. So what was your first contact with Star Trek?
So it was through my mother. I believe we were just kind of flipping channels, or she watched Star Trek The Next Generation. And it was probably, I'm going to say, third season is what was currently airing. And I started watching it with her. I remember her telling me that when she was a little girl, she used to play she watched the 60s show, and she played Star Trek in the backyard, and she would pretend to be Spock. That's who she always was.
Right.
Yeah, and we talked about that. And so, for me, it was original airing of Next Generation. They were all my action figures. That was my, after school show. I was in syndication on Fox. They'd play 1 or 2 episodes a night at 5 and 6. I would get a blank VHS tape and record all the episodes, and then had a program, a written down index of this episode's on this tape and this episode's on that tape, and they're over here and they're over here. And I'd buy a TV guide so that's how I know all the episode title names, because I always had to look them up in the TV guide to know whether I had it or not. So yeah, that was it was all about Next Generation.
Yeah. I will tell you very similarly. First off, of course, I used to have my favorite VHS tapes, right? And there were usually Beverly Crusher episodes that I was recording and keeping. But speaking back to the TV guide, and I might have mentioned this somewhere before, but Okay, so I watched TNG from the beginning pretty much. And I knew my favorite from the get-go was Beverly Crusher. And then Beverly Crusher was gone, and I was very upset. And I was still watching. But I remember one day, like it must have been September of 1989, flipping through the TV guide. It was a Saturday, I think, because on the highlight for that evening, it was saying it highlighted Star Trek The Next Generation returning. And it said Gates McFadden returns as Dr. Beverly Crusher in season 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation tonight on whatever channel. And I was like, I got so excited. And then I wondered, what the fuck did they do to her hair? Even at like 13 years old, I knew that was an awful wig.
Oh, and we went through so many wigs, and Gates talks on Twitter about how she hated all of them. But I always thought actresses, especially in shows like that where you're filming so many weeks a year and so many hours, I was always under the impression that actresses preferred wigs so they didn't damage their original hair.
Yeah, like Linda Carter talks about the only episode of Wonder Woman that's Linda Carter's hair is the first episode, the pilot movie, because they fried her hair making the pilot movie. And I think sometimes when she's Diana Prince, it's her real hair, but when she's Wonder Woman, that's a big old wig. Yeah. So,
and it also
for the
works
exact
with
reason that you just said,
like if you got to go back and film something or add an insert, like for continuity, because I always like when it's a two-parter. And they clearly had summer break, and suddenly Troy has like an incredible tan in part 2.
Oh yeah. Or go back to Best of Both Worlds, the end of Best of Both Worlds in the part 1, beginning of part 2. Especially if you watch the new edited together feature movie, Beverly's wig is completely different. Like they show Beverly, Riker says fire. And then they flip back to Beverly, and suddenly it's a whole nother. Not only is the wig a different length, it's a different color. It's like, okay, Beverly got a new wig. But I liked her 5th season wig, or that was like, at least she was starting to look like a regular person. Like it was the long hair, but that was still a wig.
Right. I always thought she looked I loved her. They got her best hair in All Good Things and Generations.
Yeah. Season 7, that whole leading up to All Good Things, and you're right, Generations. Her cast picture for Generations is perfect. I use it for everything still. So yeah. Anyways, that was a lot about Beverly's hair. What is your favorite Trek series?
It's Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's
yes.
I'm rewatching it again now. I've rewatched it a million times. It was my entry to Star Trek. It was, my action figures, my play sets. I'd write short stories about it. I was absolutely obsessed. And I love Deep Space Nine. I really, of course, love Picard season 3. There's only a handful of Star Treks that I don't watch or don't care for, and we don't have to get into that. But but it always comes back to TNG, which informs what I want from a Star Trek and what I like about a Star Trek, which will be different for other people who enter the franchise in other ways. But for me, it's hands down Next Gen always.
Yeah, I like that. Your premiere episode of this season for Zhuzherations, where you talk about Farpoint being the worst pilot, and it's like, of course it's the worst pilot if you stop and think about it, because until season 3 of TNG, they didn't know what the heck they were doing. And by the time they got toward the end of TNG and they were ready for DS9, they had a well-polished world in which to go launch DS9 and Voyager, and all the pilots got significantly better, So, but yeah, TNG, we had to pay our dues until we got season 3.
Yeah, I mean, the best pilot, in my opinion, is still Emissary. Still ball my eyes out with that one. Yeah,
I love to watch that. I loved Kira. Like that's the first time I watched a pilot, fell in love with the character, and for the duration of that show, my favorite character did not change like that. Like Kira was like, oh, this is a badass, damaged person, and she's not going to take shit from anybody, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And just like for real fans, right? We put the time in, right, to go back and see like Wolf 359 be expanded on. That's like totally like building out that multiverse, or expanded universe.
It's interesting. You think about it. All of the Berman era treks, they all launch from a pivotal moment, or what they try to make a pivotal moment, in case of Voyager, of Star Trek, right? So, Next Gen lays the groundwork, creates the world. Deep Space Nine launches from Wolf 359. Voyager launches from the Cardassian Maquis conflict,
which
right?
they
That's
peppered
where
in TNG and DS9.
Right. So they set that up as what, and it probably was meant to be bigger in Deep Space Nine, and they went to the Dominion instead, because that didn't last very long. And then Enterprise is born from First Contact, really,
Yeah.
the movie. So they're all sort of like the seed that creates that series is all something laid in from the prior universe. And the first time, right? And then when we get into the current era of Treks, they have other connections to the thing, but they have their own sort of stuff.
What is your favorite Trek episode?
So, I mean, that's, of course, extraordinarily difficult. So I'm going to answer, well, first, and we'll talk about this later. When I tell you that episode 2 of season 2 of Strange New Worlds is going to be one of the top Star Trek episodes of all time, I'm talking cried, stood up, standing ovation. One of my probably favorite guest actors in all of Star Trek, and I want them to spin off a show based on her. She's so good and just captivating, and everyone in that theater loved her. It's The New Measure of a Man.
It's the courtroom episode, right? It's
the courtroom episode. It's the courtroom episode, and Una's lawyer is a superstar. So murders the episode, and I will tell you, it sold me finally, because I've had some problems with Strange New Worlds. It sold me on Strange New Worlds, where I was like, okay, I feel like we're in safe hands now.
I have to wait 9 days to find this out. 10.
I'll mention that is not it won't be my favorite, because I have a long history of Star Trek, but I can imagine people who have come into the franchise recently, and maybe with Strange New Worlds, this will be their episode. I think.
Feel like, though, and we'll get to your answer in a minute, but I feel something that I love, that New Trek is still making like all-time good episodes. Like there's like I love Unification Part 3 from Discovery. I love that episode. I love pretty much all of season 3 of Picard, but there's some doozies in there. No Win Scenario comes to mind.
That's the
4th episode. Yeah. That's the one that is when that whole episode builds up, but when Beverly says to seek out new life at the end, I'm like, Trek. Like, because everything's happening there, and they take a quick little pause from everything that's going on to witness this like Star Trek moment. And I'm like, we are still making some of the best Trek ever, and that's what I want to point out here, is like that it's still the episodes that are coming out now. We'll see how we feel about them a year from now or whatever, but they're that good that we're calling it great Trek, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I have a more tempered opinion about that, but we will say that for another time. I will answer my question, which was, what is my favorite episode? And what I will say is the episode, this is how I'm defining it. The episode, if you have a friend who you wanted to get into Star Trek, and they're like, I don't know if I'm a Star Trek fan, this is the episode I recommend you show them, because it has absolutely everything that you want from a Star Trek episode. You get a full tour of the ship and an understanding how the ship works. You get a problem that every cast member has to contribute in order to solve it. You get strong secondary characters. You get humor. You get action. You get, what's the other thing I always say about this episode?
I think I know what it is.
And that episode is Disaster.
I thought I was going to say.
Disaster is the and a scientific technobabble, thing they have to figure out. They make up a cosmic string, or not a cosmic string, a quantum filament. But everything to me that makes Star Trek is in this episode. And it's a good episode on top of it. So if you want to introduce someone to the franchise and you want to do it through TNG, which I recommend, this is the episode that I'd say, like, before you tell them, like, start with season 3 or start with season 1 or whatever, have them watch this, and they'll make it. They don't like that, they're not going to like Star Trek.
I agree with that. What is your favorite Trek movie?
So I think the best movie is probably Undiscovered Country. My favorite, but then, because you have to answer it two ways, because Undiscovered Country, I think, is the best, just like well-crafted movie. You could take that script, make some changes in the relationships, and it could be a regular old, just non-Star Trek movie. It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
The
thriller.
A lot of the Star Trek, a political thriller. It could be like one of those, like, Clear and Present Danger, Jack Ryan.
I was gonna say Hunt for Red October. Yeah, all that.
Yeah. Could be one of those. Whereas a lot of the other Star Trek movies are just very dependent on, like, this is Star Trek and a Star Trek movie, and it does rely on the Trek universe, but just the plot itself, I think, really lends itself now, because. I mean, I even love, this is not my favorite, but I even love Insurrection, and I have some love for Nemesis, because I just like seeing my crew, and my crew are the Next Gen crew. So, of course, their best movie is First Contact, though Justice for Generations, I don't think it's as bad as people say it is.
Generations is aging well, and I don't know if you've seen the new 4K cut of it. It does actually looks a lot better now. I think it's on Paramount Plus now. Again, finally, listeners, all Star Trek movies are back on Paramount Plus, where they belong, not on HBO Max. But Nemesis sits a little better with me now, having had Picard season 3, because I no longer think of Nemesis as the final TNG outing. It's just another adventure, not the final adventure. And it's a little bit more palatable. It's got its moments. It does definitely. You could do a whole episode to Zhuzh Nemesis. I think you did already, didn't you?
No, we did it Insurrection as a Patreon.
Insurrection.
Exclusive.
So did we get your favorite as Generations, or for your favorite? Is your favorite Generations or Undiscovered?
No, the favorite is Undiscovered. It's Undiscovered Country.
Okay.
It's just a great.
Because I know you were thinking. I thought you were saying it was the best, but is it your favorite? There's that could be two different answers, but I agree. Undiscovered Country is my favorite. We just talked about it last week with Eric, but I love that movie. I love Valeris. I love the A. I love the Excelsior. So many good things about it.
Well, apparently the Valeris character was originally conceived to be Saavik, but they thought the fans would be upset if Saavik was a traitor, so that's why they didn't use her.
Well, in part, they wanted it Saavik, but they only wanted Saavik if first they did not want Robin Curtis back. They wanted Kirstie Alley back, and Kirstie Alley had a scheduling conflict or something with Cheers, or didn't want to do it. Whatever the reason was, Kirstie Alley was out, and so because they couldn't get Kirstie Alley, they were either going to recast it, but they said instead of casting the role for the third time, let's just change the character. And that's how Kim Cattrall settled it.
Why did they want Robin Curtis?
I think I love Robin Curtis, for the record, everybody. We have some really good talks, but I don't feel that she's Kirstie Alley level acting. And there's a little piece of Kirstie Alley Saavik that got not mentioned on Star Trek 2, but within the script and within the book, was that she was half Romulan, half Vulcan. And that kind of explains her more emotional reactions and her crying at the end of Wrath of Khan. She's doing some very un-Vulcan-like things. When Leonard Nimoy directed Robin Curtis in Star Trek 3 and 4, he had her play the role full Vulcan. And you see all of that kind of sassiness that Kirstie Alley Savick had is gone. It's just, she's just very Vulcan by the book, just like your father, blah, 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 blah. So I think to make her work, I think to make her work more as like this treacherous Vulcan, making her half Romulan and having her be like more Savick's Vulcan kind of, I don't know, I think it's a little bit more believable that she might be a traitor. That's just total speculation on my part. I loved Kirstie Alley Savick. I often reference it as like my first favorite character from Star Trek. Star Trek 2 was probably my first Star Trek that I saw, and I loved Kirstie Alley. That's just like little 5-year-old gay boy being attracted to the diva in the movie. I just thought that I would have loved her to be in 6, but at the same time, I love the character Savick, but I like that they didn't make Savick a traitor. That Valeris was the traitor, and Savick was the first captain of the Titan. So, according to Star Trek, who is your favorite character?
It's Beverly Crusher. It's always been Beverly Crusher. It's always been Beverly Crusher. She was so again, even though like I love Kira, I can't. There are only a handful of characters that I like. I would say I like don't like, but like I like every character. I love Kira. I love Dax. I love Odo. I love I mean all of the Next Gen. I love them all. But there was something about Beverly having sort of a different sensibility and a different set of priorities, and her actually knowing the captain as a person as opposed to like the revered Captain Picard. And she was like the only one on the ship that would call him by his first name, and the only one on the ship who would kind of be like, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this because this is wrong. And like she was the only one who would stand up and not just sort of bow because it's Captain Picard. Even if they disagreed, she would take that disagreement to the mat. And I think one of the best, she's not even in the scene, but one of the absolute best explanations of just who Beverly Crusher is in one of my favorite episodes, The High Ground, where it's at the very beginning and they suggest they're just going to beam her up, and they look at Riker and he goes, well, I don't want to be in the transporter room to greet her. That's Beverly Crusher.
Worf is talking to Picard and Crusher's doing her thing. Worf and Data, I think, are talking to Picard via comm. And I always say too, I referenced this before, and I've actually clipped this scene and thrown it on Twitter a few times. It's that short breakfast scene in season 5. The alien lady who's from X-Men who imprints on Picard.
Famke Janssen in Perfect Mate. Mm-hmm.
Perfect Mate. And Beverly is having breakfast with Jean-Luc, and she's like calling him out. She's like, she's a slave on this ship. You know that ambassador that you call that slave trader that you call an ambassador. She's just like advocating for this woman, and like and he's like, I didn't know. Did you know she's confined to her quarters? I did not know that. Well, it's your ship. Maybe you should know what's going on it. She's just like, nobody on that ship in season 5, besides maybe Guinan, could talk to Jean-Luc that way.
Yes, and that's why I liked her, because Picard is so. Oh, and I have a little story here. Because Picard is so, he was my father figure on television, so I get like he's so revered, he's so beloved. You needed a character who wasn't a villain to be able to go toe to toe with him, so everyone just wasn't like, of course, sir, and blah, 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 and falling all over themselves because you're Captain Picard.
Whatever you want.
You needed someone who could challenge him. Guinan did that, I think, more than Crusher did at times in the seasons, but like that was Crusher's role. And it's funny because there was this. Today, I would think. He was a teacher of mine. He was an 8th grade world studies teacher, and he loved Star Trek. And he actually took me to the theater to see First Contact because my father didn't care for Star Trek. so he took me to see it, and we had an argument, not an argument, but an argument about how he hated the character of Beverly Crusher because she talked back to the captain and that wasn't appropriate or this and that. And it's funny because looking at him back now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I can see why you wouldn't want a lady talking to a man that way. I see I see that now. Yeah.
He was more sexist than he was following like
Yes.
military chain of command or anything like that.
And it's only in hindsight as an adult where I look back and I'm like, oh, that's why you didn't like her. You don't like a lady talking back to a man. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny how adult eyes can look back and be like, oh, I totally read that wrong. But
Right.
yeah. Well, I love that you love Beverly. I did not know that about. How did I know that about you? Because the only time that you and I really got to talk was at STLV, and there was drinks going. So
Yes.
who knows what I don't
Yes, there
remember?
was.
Who knows what I don't remember? Oh, good. Okay, so so I get to ask number 6. Who is your favorite captain?
I mean, I just at this point the interview just writes itself. It's Captain Picard. It's always Captain Picard.
I know. I always do I think I know how you're going to answer this, and I think when I watch it back, I'm like, I sound annoying to myself, so I can only listen to how listeners think when I say that. So I just let you answer.
Yeah, Captain Picard was my father figure. He was a Renaissance man. He had, I loved that he was a nerd for archaeology. He, one of the things that I have a problem with our newer Trek shows is when Picard broke the rule. Picard cared about the rules. He cared about the values and the principles of Starfleet, even when it was a tough decision. Like, it takes an entire episode to convince him to intervene in pen pals, even though, this little girl is out there calling for help. It's hard because he knows the bigger picture, and he knows that this is terrible. He's not heartless, but there's bigger values here, and there's bigger principles and this and that. And I feel like in Next Gen, it was cool to follow the rules. It was good. Like, we valued that. And in these new Trek shows, it leans a little more like, we got to make our own rules out here. We got to, it's a little more, they like the rebel more than the person who follows him. And in that way, this is my personal opinion, that I feel like they like the rebel more in recent Star Trek. I mean, Jack Crusher. They even paint Picard and Riker as if they are these like devil may care, this and that. And like when Shaw was talking to them in the Turbolift about that, I'm like, were you watching the same show I was? Because I think that was pretty rare.
Yeah, it's funny, like even the exact references that Shaw had, I'm like, did you really read the Starfleet reports on those? Because XYZ, you crash landed a saucer. Yeah, because what did Picard do in Generations that was wrong? Nothing. You know what I mean? Like, everything was by the book, pretty much. There was no rogueness. Geordi got kidnapped, and
someone was going to destroy millions of people on a planet, and it sounds like the ship was destroyed, but almost very minimal casualties. So it sounds like a success to me.
Yeah. Picard. He's a good guy. And he's one of my, he was also like a father figure to me too. Still, I have my favorite the quotable Picard, this little book is just nothing but Picard wisdom. I love it. Who is your favorite Star Trek crush?
So that's a hard one because I'm not that guy. And I'm like I'm weird in that respect. Like, I talk to people and I understand that I'm rare in this respect. I have never looked at a movie star, a television star, a character, and ever had any sort of romantic or sexual feelings towards them. I don't crush on things like that. Like, I crush on like a real person in real life who's talking to me.
Yeah.
I don't crush on like, so I like when it's like, ooh, who's your Hollywood, what guy in Hollywood? And you get these people who are like, oh, I love, who's the One Direction, Harry Styles, and blah, blah. I've never felt that way. I've never fangirled in that way about anybody. So I would
not
say
even Henry Cavill.
He's hot, but I'm not like he is hot. Yeah. He has a great body. He is hot, but like, I'm not going to follow his Instagram account because of that. Like, I'm not going to go to the movies because I'm going to go to the movies because Julia Louis-Dreyfus isn't something because she's a phenomenal actress. Not to say that Henry Cavill's not a good actor, but like I follow people because of the talent, not because like I have a crush on them. And I don't even have talent. I don't know. I'm just not that guy. But I will tell you that based on my dating history, the kind of guy that would go for me and the kind of guy that like that would be reciprocal and we'd have a lot of fun is Riker. I would date a Riker.
Okay. Well, Daddy Riker. I thought you might say, I had a feeling you would say Riker-ish if you had to pick somebody. You know, I mean, I can watch like Strange New Worlds and be like, you know, Captain Pike, pretty easy on the eyes, you know.
Oh, he's hot, and I do like his character, but there's a I always go for the like he's a good man and a good guy, and he knows what's right and he knows what's wrong, and he's, you know, but he's just a little bit of a scoundrel. And Riker's just a little bit of a scoundrel. Like Riker and I are going to like do our jobs and take it seriously and this and that. And then we're gonna sneak into the holodeck and do some like wild shit that we're not gonna tell anybody about. Like that's my guy.
See, I knew you had an answer in you. There you go. That was pretty specific.
Well,
I like
it. Imagine? Can you imagine? Here's the thing: Justice for Barclay. Barclay did a lot with the holodeck.
Had it all figured out. And he had it all figured out.
And how much do you want to bet that he was such a weirdo because he had to constantly go in and clean up after Riker?
Yeah,
clean those, scrub those holodecks, and just like now he's just so like, oh god, I hate these people. I don't want to talk to any of these people.
I love that we see that in Lower Decks. they kind of make that exact reference to cleaning up them holodecks, man. It's job for the peasants. What's your favorite starship? I mean,
come on.
The D.
It's the D. Oh, and that's one of the reasons why. Oh yeah, did you see that's what the picture I have here is?
Yeah,
it's the one you showed on the screen. Yeah, they handed it out I was at the Picard IMAX finale in New York.
Oh,
and they handed these out at the end.
Yeah, they didn't show that in San Diego.
And the popcorn bucket.
Yeah. I got that popcorn bucket photo, which is like listeners, it's like the full cast photo of they did like 2 different ones for Picard. But I got posters of that when I got to go to the Picard premiere in Hollywood where all the stars were at. I did not get to go to the finale because they didn't have one in San Diego. And I wasn't driving to LA just to watch the finale a few hours early.
So with the Enterprise D, so one, it's, you know, the ship of my entry into Star Trek and my favorite crew and my favorite show. So obviously that. Also, I feel like more than any other Star Trek show, and DS9 included, because there's a lot of that station we didn't see. A lot. This is the show where, like, it paid off to be a careful fan who knew where everything was and what Jeffrey's tube went where. And they really did a lot to build the world of the ship and keep it consistent once they did that, to the point where one of my favorite pieces of Trek merchandise are the Enterprise D blueprints. I tore through those as a child. I would spend hours just going through them. I would use it to make my own blueprints. My mom would buy me graph paper books at the grocery store, and I would like look at that and then like, okay, well, my saucer only has like 10 decks, and like that's where this is, and that's where this is, and I draw them. Like I
love that,
and I feel like that's something that new Star Trek is missing. Like I don't know where anything is on the Discovery.
Yeah,
I don't know where anything is on.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of this.
I want technical manuals. I want blueprints. I want how do things work? Why do things work? You know, like that's what I want. I feel like Stranger Worlds could do it. I feel like they have all the pieces, and I think Discovery, especially with that turbo lift thing, like they
jumped the shark with that. They jumped the shark when they did that. That was weird. Like really, the ship isn't big enough to do what you just did, let alone it was very Kelvin universe type thing to pull. Yes, and I'm like, and there's reasons why I'm not a big fan of the Kelvin universe. I mean, I like elements of it. I like. Yeah, we won't. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
But I am about, like you said. Come on, CBS, Paramount, We want some technical manuals, schematics, blueprints. You know, you got the Doug Drexlers, you've got the Okudas. Put them to work. We want to see that.
Right.
David
I
Blass.
want to know David Blass because he's on the current. He was on Picard, so like I know that he cares about these things and know these things. And I don't mean this pejoratively. I'm just saying I don't know if the art designers and the people who have the Okuda's job and the director's job on the new shows, I don't know if they're as into that as the Okuda's and directors. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know.
And I know that one thing that would probably make the writing tighter, though, is if that stuff were available to the writers, because they're just writing shit sometimes. That's how you got your Discovery bullshit that you're talking about, that elevator, the turbo lift scene at the end of season 3.
And some of this, honestly, if I'm being frank, some of this in Picard in earlier seasons is, I think, Patrick Stewart's fault, which is that in a lot of the new series, and again, seeing the premiere of season 2 of Strange New Worlds has given me a lot of hope for that show. So much hope for that show. But a lot of the new series up until Picard season 3, they are not constrained by Trek things. They're going to tell the story they want to tell. And then if there's something that gets in the way of it, they're going to ignore it or hand wave it. Because it's more important to them to tell the story that they want to tell. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it is a choice that they have made as a production. They've made the choice that these are the stories they want to tell. To the extent that Star Trek works with it, great. To the extent Star Trek doesn't work with it, we're going to ignore it and favor the story. And I would prefer they build, people who love Lord of the Rings, people who love Harry Potter, people who love the Star Wars, these immersive...
We love the universes.
We want the universe, and we want it consistent with the universe. When actors complain that, like, well, we're not supposed to be, we're not supposed to have major conflicts with each other because, yes, sorry, you're going to have conflicts with other people. That's what we want. We want the future where we resolve our problems and our tiffs are minor and we go to the counselor and then we're all better. We don't want long-held grudges between Starfleet officers. I'm sorry if that doesn't make good drama, as you always, all the actors complain. Right, but you can find ways around it, and you can find ways to do it, but keep it. I'm sorry that that's not as interesting to you as an actor, but that's not. Then don't do this show. Like, this is the show I want.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I hear you. All right, I'm going to switch up the order of the last 2 questions because they really should change order. Do you have a favorite uniform?
I mean, come on. It's the regular. It's the starting at, I guess, halfway through season 3, because the beginning of season 3 of TNG, they had like a scene
those
here.
Darts.
It was kind of weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those weird darts.
But when they figured it out, and I bought. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, even if you look very closely, even Dr. Crusher's wearing a 2-piece uniform in the very first few episodes of season 3. Not a full jumpsuit.
She has weird darts here.
Yeah.
So I love the latter half next gen. It felt like I don't know. It was like a suit, like they were, because with the shoulder pads and everything, it just felt, I don't know. But it's also my childhood, so that might be nostalgia. But I bought the right, and I bought the patterns for it and hired a customer here in New York to make it. So I have like a screen accurate TNG one. They're tough to make. It cost me some money. They're hard. And I saw someone yesterday at the premiere of Strange New Worlds who was in the best season 1 next gen jumpsuit I've ever seen. It was impeccable. I was so impressed. I was like, that is like, did you buy this? Is that screen used? Did you buy that? Because that was good. Yeah.
I started going down that road in January 2020, and I bought the pattern and I met with a seamstress and she was all about it. And COVID started, and I swear to God, I even lost her number. And the sad thing is, she had the pattern. I left the pattern with her, so I'm like, oh shit, I lost that pattern.
They're on eBay though. Whatever. You can get them. They're on eBay.
I bought it. I bought it on Etsy, so I'm not worried. I know how to get it back. But I've also been like hunting down. One of the reasons we didn't get started right away was I went hunting for the exact right fabrics, to go get her to be able to do it right.
Nice.
Okay.
But I did buy
Last question.
from
Sorry.
I bought from Genuine Leather their made to order Picard season 3 jackets. I got a Riker jacket, so I'm waiting for that to arrive.
All right. Well, I'll slap you silly because this vegan doesn't do leather anymore, but it used to be. But Volante this week is dropping their version of this, and Volante does vegan leather. So I think it's the 15th, which will. So I am ready to splurge for it. I'm ready to go because I'm like, I want that shit for STLV.
Yes, same. I'll be there. Yeah.
But I have started to see people popping up online with the jacket that you're talking about, and it does look screen accurate. And
I've seen the one from Hero Within, which is a good sort of economical choice. Like it's not as expensive, and it looks good.
Well,
yeah.
Well, there was also that Cosmart, which is an eBay thing out of China, and I did get two things for them. I just got the Commodore Admiral. The Admiral Crusher uniform, as I call it here. I will add it. I'm going to add it back. I'm going to add pictures back so I can show you. I have a version of this, which FanFet sent me the wrong badge, so I'm waiting for a replacement, and I need to get the Admiral's pips, but I'm going to be good to go.
The mail lost my badges. I bought both of them, and the mail lost them, so they refunded me. But so I got the gold one when it was back in stock, and yesterday they got the dark one back in stock. I just reordered that.
I have the dark one. I need the gold one, which is I want to do this look as me for STLV at some point. So I have that from them, and then I have their version of the I'll put this right back. These jackets as we're talking about, which is the picture that was behind you for those of you who couldn't tell. This is the badass picture of I could just see the updated technical manual with this being not the companion, with this being the cover.
Oh yeah.
Come on, Larry Nemechek, this is for you.
My picture's a little bit different because it also has Jack, Raffi, and Seven.
Oh, okay. So you have that version of it. I know that they literally it was probably senior pictures that day on that bridge set. Like, let's do every combination we can. Yeah. What does Star Trek mean to you?
So Star Trek was my escapism as a child. So I'll get a little vulnerable. I'll get a little serious. So I had a pretty solitary childhood. I did not have very many friends. I was pretty obviously effeminate. I was into effeminate things. I was in dance classes. I was in theater. I sang. I did all that kind of stuff. And I was also I was good in school, which was not cool. It was not good to be a nerd in those days. And I like nerdy things like Star Trek. It was not cool to be friends with Jack Tracy. So I did not have very many friends, and Star Trek was where I lived. I lived in my head, and I lived in my room. I made those blueprints. I would then take those graph papers, and I would make my own LCARS displays and tape them around my house. So when I was around my house as a kid, I had things to do, I got to work on this station, and I got to go over here and work on this station. I made our house a starship. I would play with the Playmates action figures, and mom's room had the blue comforter, so that was the ice planet, and the backyard was the jungle, and that's where the runabout was crashed. And then this is over. It's the whole house was being used for my imagination, right? And so the darkest times in school, I had a little with the Playmates figures, they came with the stands that were the communicators, and that's what you put them on to stand them up. So I would put one in my backpack, and I would imagine that I was on an undercover away mission while I was at school, and I was in constant contact with the ship. So in my head, I was having conversations with calling in to talk to Crusher or calling in to report to Riker. And that was sort of my escapism when I was in school and not having the best time. So Star Trek is very personal for me. And then on top of that, my morality is the morality of Star Trek: The Next Generation. My sense of right and wrong, my sense of justice, my sense of social justice, my sense of duty, of loyalty, of standing up to face injustice. Like everything that is the core of how what I think is right and wrong is from Star Trek: The Next Generation, with the accepted treatment of women in seasons 1 and 2.
I love that. I love that. And, I identify with so much of what you said, and I won't get too deep into it because I've talked about it on this podcast before. I don't know that I was quite as far into the escapism that you were, but I did definitely do the imaginary thing. And I, even high school, I would read the Star Trek novels and TNG novels, which were like literal, like lone episode. Each one's like its own episode, but I would read those like almost in between classes sometimes. Like I would be like, okay, I got 5 minutes, I can read, like instead of like socializing like everybody else was doing.
My copy of Imzadi is warped at the end of the book, like the end of the pages. It's like big and bulky because I left it on the top of the washer and it got wet and detergent on it, so it's like the cover's a little stained and it's a little like blown up, and I'm actually right now rereading all of the New Frontier series.
Yeah, I just found hardbounds of Imzadi 1 and 2, so I just I added those to my collection. Like, I have a nice, and they're in great shape too, so I'm like, I have a hardback of it, so that was definitely worth it. Awesome. All right. So I guess that it concludes our little trekking to know you. The reason I have Picard slides in here, viewers and listeners, that you're not seeing this, we have some slides. I just kind of want to remind everybody that, the nothing has been said about Legacy getting a green light yet. And I know CBS Paramount is still looking at views. So remember to watch Picard whenever you can, or let it run in the background or whatever. It does binge really nicely now that all 10 episodes are up to. So, and any excuse for me to be able to show this picture of Admiral Crusher again is well worth it. All right. So we're going to get to our real topic one, which was what we talked about a little bit, that Jack got to see episodes 1 and 2 at the Strange New Worlds premiere last night in New York. And so Jack, without getting over spoilery, I know we talked a little bit about the courtroom episode, but that is the scene that they dropped. That we've already been teased that. So that's the only reason I said that out loud.
So they were very clear, you're here, please don't spoil, and nothing about, plot points or this and that. So I'm not going to talk about that at all. I will say, like, getting there, I was invited. I didn't like score a ticket. Someone else did. And they asked on Twitter, does anyone in New York want to go? And I jumped on it. Lovely drag queen, Flip Kiki. She does 7 of 9 at Barracuda on Saturday nights with Heather Wood, who does Janeway. She does other people as well, but I've seen her mostly as 7 of 9. She went with me. She went as Angel from season 1 of Strange New Worlds. She looked incredible. So we went. I saw a lot of familiar faces of people that I remember being at the IMAX Picard season 3 finale. There's a guy who I remember him being Tuvok, season 3 Tuvok. There was another 7 of 9. I was just like, oh, I know these people. And I believe the guy who is the head of the, what's it called? Gaze in Space. I believe he was there. He looked, I think he was there. Yes. Yeah. I think he was there.
I know he was there because of pictures. I don't know that he's the guy you saw, but I think
he was. Yeah, because I think I know what he looks like, and I think I saw him with scruff once. But yeah, I think he was there.
Well, I met you at one of his parties, so
yes. So it was a really well-run event. I kept it. I have for those of you who are watching this on video, they gave us like a really big like ticket, which had my seat. They gave you assigned seats as you came in so that you didn't have to scramble. No one was fighting. And our assigned seats were center of the theater, center row. Like we had the best seats in the house by chance. So it was great. They gave us, we had free drinks, free popcorn, one free drink, one free popcorn. At the end, we got a swag bag with a poster, a cup, like a cooler cozy, all like branded stuff. And then what else did they give? I feel like we got something else. No, that was it. Started on time, played them back to back. There was a nice little intro. Obviously, like Zoom screens of all of the casts like welcoming us and thanking us, which was really nice.
Great.
So, yeah, that the only things I'll say about the episode. So I saw the first two. The first episode is where you're going to see the Klingons. And you're going to see them, you know, and this is in the trailer. I'm not saying anything. You saw that they're Klingons. We saw them in the trailer. I'm not saying anything that hasn't been out there. So that's where you see them. It's the first episode. And they're very Next Gen Deep Space Nine era Klingons. There's references to things that we know from that era that Klingons do and say and honor and cultural stuff. And like, it's a nice hybrid between Next Gen and TOS Klingons.
So the Disco season 1 and 2 haters will be happy.
Right. I'm not just talking about the look. Like the look is back.
Yeah.
It's like elevated, it's updated a little bit, but
yeah.
like, you know, just in terms of it's a little sharper, it's a little, you know, the Klingons all, and everybody looks, when I say that each Klingon looks different, they still look like Klingons, but there's a little more diversity in how they look.
Which
I'm about to lose my headphones. I don't know if my sound is affected. Yeah, there's a more diverse. They all still look like Klingons, but the diversity of their individual looks. And I got to tell you, there are two badass looking Klingon women. Badass looking Klingon, like Kalar season 2 with like 5 different outfits. You know, like Kalar emissary kind of Klingon.
All right.
Or even the Klingon woman at the beginning of Star Trek 3. Like a fabulous Klingon.
Kang's girlfriend, or what? Krug's girlfriend.
Krug's girlfriend. Yeah. Yes. So you get to see one of her. There's a couple of them. That's great, and they have things. So, and the first episode is much more of a movie, meaning it's less of like a science question. It's an action adventure.
Oh, okay.
Shooting, fighting, hijinks. There's a lot of, if you're someone who doesn't like the Kelvin universe or that kind of like tenor of Star Trek, you may not love it's a great episode, but you may not love it because there is a lot of fighting. There's a lot of fighting. Yeah. Fight.
It's okay to, you know, I could say it's okay to have that for an episode. It's another thing to build a whole universe and a whole movie franchise around it, you know.
Right. So I would say if you watch that first episode and you're like, oh, it's just another action adventure sci-fi. This isn't Star Trek. Wait till episode 2. I promise they're going to take care of you. Just wait. Yeah. But yeah, it's a big action adventure punch out. They start to develop a M'Benga story and his new arc now that his daughter is gone, and I like it so much better.
Yeah, we literally recorded this week's episode of All Good Things yesterday, and we kind of did a season 1 recap and season 2 speculation on All Good for Strange New Worlds and M'Benga. That was our thing. That was a dumb storyline last year. I had a lot of problems with it, but please give him something new to do, because I like the guy and I think I like the character. So just give him something better to do.
So the Chapel Spock stuff is addressed. The aftermath of Spock losing his emotional barriers after the Gorn stuff is addressed and dealt with, and I think that's going to be a continuing thing. All of the things that were left on a cliffhanger are at least starting, if not. Una stuff goes into episode 2, but like you're getting like people who have gone away start to come back. You know, like you start like, and that's what I'm going to say is the overall thing of episode 1. It works the best. What it does best is gelling that crew as like a cohesive family that makes sense and cares for each other and works together. There's some great like the scene in Star Trek 3 where Kirk has everybody in his apartment talking about what they need to do. There's a scene like that, and it's really good, where they realize they have to do something, and they come together as a group to do something, as we have to do this for a friend kind of thing, which is great. It's that camaraderie, and it's really well done. It's really well executed in a way that I always felt that on Discovery, a lot of that camaraderie wasn't earned because we didn't know who half those characters were because they never did anything.
Right.
Not so in this one. And you get, and I apologize that I don't know her name, but the woman of Asian descent who sits next to Ortega. She's not a main character, but she's there every now and then.
Yeah, I know she's actually in the comic books I just read too, but
she has more to do. She has more to do.
Well, that's good. That's good.
And Carol Kane steals the episode because she's so funny.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, let's stop. Let's back out of some of the more specific things and just talk about that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I've been looking forward to her. So she's what we've been hoping for.
There's okay, I'll say this. She's not what she seems, but she's not hiding anything. You find out that she's not exactly what she appears to be. It makes an interesting story and a very Star Trek story. And she has a connection to one of the main characters that main character does not know and finds out. And it kind of hits you in the heart.
Oh, all right.
When you realize how she's connected. Yeah, no, I won't say why. But
you're giving me a lot, though. That's a lot.
No, I didn't tell you anything about the plot, or no, I didn't tell you nothing. Trust me, I've ruined nothing.
All right. I am really looking forward to it. I wanted to, because I don't want to get too spoilery, and I think you're getting into some specifics here, but looking forward to the rest of the season. You say it's kind of really teed up and everything's off full speed ahead, and
Episode 2 is one of the best episodes of Star Trek. It'll be in top lists. It is and this is giving away because it's a trial, and it's about Una, and
we do know that.
We know. So it is very Measure of a Man and legal precedent and her rights and Starfleet's rules about this kind of stuff. And the woman who plays her lawyer, who we've seen in clips, is so spectacular that I want her to be a main character. I want her to be on the ship all the time. I want them to spin off a show based on her. There's petitions for legacy. There are going to be petitions for her to have her own show, or for her to be brought into season 3 of Strange New Worlds as the main character. She is so good that people cheered at her monologues and lines and scenes. And it's going to hit not just queer people, but any marginalized community. There are some real... When Guinan in Measure of a Man talks about Picard and makes the reference to slavery and how that feels when you hear that, it does a good job on touching on some things that are happening today, especially to the queer community, in not a heavy-handed way, but in a way that's really gonna hit you.
All right. Well, listeners, we'll get this all digested. You'll probably be able to watch episode 1 around the time you're listening to this, if not already when you're listening to this, and episode 2.
So I spoiled nothing.
Right after. Yes. Yeah. I will say just 2 things I'm looking forward to. I talked to listeners a little bit about some of this stuff. Of course, we're looking forward to our Lower Decks episode, which is supposed to be episode 7. And listeners, I put this out there yesterday on All Good Things, and I'm putting it out here now. I'm putting money that episode 9 is a musical episode. It'll be the first musical episode ever of Star Trek. It's, and Jack's making the faces, but everything's pointing that way. A lot of things.
Better be well justified.
Well, I agree with that.
That's
It
all
better
I'm saying.
it needs to make sense, or else I'm not going to be happy. I do like a good musical. I watched the Tonys last night. While you were at the premiere, that's what I was doing. But it needs to make sense, or else I'm not going to be happy either. Because it doesn't. Just because two things I like come together doesn't mean they should. So we'll have to see. But I'm just putting it out there that I'm pretty damn sure it is. So not saying that's a good thing or bad.
If they do it the way Cupid works, where they begrudgingly have to comply with some sort of fantastical thing in order to get through it, I'll be happy.
Okay, I'll take that. All right. Our last little bit of news dropped just last night. David Mack, who is a very popular Star Trek novelist, announced on social media, and that's how I caught this, that he is writing the next Picard novel. And the only reason he announced it was because everything went up for pre-order on Amazon, Audible, and all that other crap yesterday. So I guess, it's out. So the Picard novel, which David Mack said it's his first hardcover Picard novel, and it's basically a 7 of 9 story. I'll read you the quick synopsis and we can talk for a quick second. Set a couple of years after Voyager's return from the Delta Quadrant, it tells the story of a young 7 of 9 having been denied a place in Starfleet, venturing alone into the galaxy to find her own identity and purpose in life. Her journey leads her to enlist in a rogue law enforcement corps known as the Ferris Rangers. The Fenris Rangers. Jeez, I should be wearing my glasses. But embracing her new destiny might mean sacrificing the most important thing in her life, her friendship with Catherine Janeway. Ooh, I love these Picard novels because I find them to be very helpful. Have you read any of them, Jack?
No, I haven't.
Oh, they're so good. This will be the 5th, I think. They're worth it. They all do a pretty good job of filling in some gaps. Last Best Hope really helped me understand season 1 of Picard a lot better. You really get the backstory between Rafi and JL, as she would call him. So we get the second novel was a Titan story with Riker and Troy, set like 10 years prior to Picard. So there's some good stories there. One called Rogue Elements is a Captain Rios adventure. It's very much like a Han Solo story. And then the last one was Rafi and Garrick, believe it or not. And you got to find out, get another Garrick adventure. Jack, if you were writing a Star Trek novel or wanted someone to write you a Star Trek novel based on a topic that you see fit, what would that be?
Well, I'll give a brief answer because I am writing a Star Trek novel, not for Star Trek, but for my own purposes. It's set in the same, in the early 2370s. It's meant to be what was going on a starship at the time of Deep Space Nine that's not lost in the Delta Quadrant. It's kind of connected to things, but is doing its own thing. It's just for my own thing. I might put it up on my Patreon for people to read it if they want it. Obviously, I'm not connected to Star Trek. I can't. It's all fan fiction, but I'm nearly finished with it, and it's novel length. It's a full novel. Anyway, that's mine.
So is that? I got a question about that. So is that set during the Dominion War or
the first before? Episode takes place during the events of the Adversary.
Okay,
and that's important because the changeling infiltrator who's trying to start the war with the Zenkethi is not the only one who's trying to screw stuff up, and this is another kind of story that's happening on a starship.
All right.
And I started writing it before Picard season 3, which unfortunately does some of the stuff that I'm doing.
A few things.
Not
Just coincidence.
A little parallel, coincidental stuff. Obviously,
I got you.
Nothing with the transporters, nothing like that. But it's just like, of course they did something with a changeling on the ship. Damn it. But anyway, for actual Star Trek writers like the amazing David Mack, who wrote the Destiny series, which is I think one of the best Star Trek series of all time. lost all my headphones. Can you still hear me?
Actually, it came on. There.
Okay, cool. There we go. Sorry, you're on my big speaker. Worf says something in his first full episode of season 3 of Picard that I really thought was going to be followed up on and was like a hint about some big Worf story that was not told, which was he throws the dagger and says, "Do not presume to know what I have and have not sacrificed for this." I want to know what he sacrificed for this to come into the fold with Ro. And I always thought it was going to be a very sad Alexander story. So he's the only one other than Riker Troy who were established later, but like we know he has a kid and the whole thing's about family. Like why was Alexander not even mentioned once? I thought that was a really missed opportunity. Worf's the only one who didn't get a family story, and he's the only one we know with a family.
I totally hear what you're saying, and I feel like that is a perfect story for a back story for Worf. Like, go tell us how. I mean, I don't even know if we have to get into what happened to the Enterprise E. That could be even another separate story of its own. But like, fill in some of these gaps into Worf post Nemesis and pre Picard season 3. How is he working in Starfleet ops for Commander Ro? And how is he? What happened to Alexander? And why is he, to your point, referencing these sacrifices that he's made?
I thought that could be and a good way to incorporate Ro and get another Ro story of her, like the beginning of her putting it together. Maybe she goes and finds Worf, whatever he's dealing with. She has to go get him and recruit him.
Yeah, that could be totally like, there's two things there. Yeah, you could totally have like a Ro Worf novel right there. And then my idea, of course, listeners probably have heard me say this. I feel like you've got a 20-year gap in Beverly Crusher's history, which the only thing we know is she got pregnant, left Starfleet, had Jack Crusher, and started all this cowboy diplomacy type frontier medicine things. How did she get the Helios? What did she do with that ship? How long did she have it? There's so many things with Beverly we could fill in the gaps here. I'd love a Beverly Crusher novel, and I want this Worf and Ro novel now that you've proposed it. We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @What'sTheTBab or leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe button here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast, and leave us a star rating and a written review. That helps others to find the show. So, Jack, where can people find you?
So the best way to connect with me is through the socials. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Obs Lounge ST. That's OBS Lounge ST for Star Trek. It's the Observation Lounge, which is my overarching platform. I have a brand new YouTube channel. Please subscribe, where I do reaction videos of the podcast Star Trek Zhuzherations, which you can get everywhere you get podcasts. I make custom Etsy figures based on the Playmates 4.5-inch line. I've made an entire set of Star Trek Picard Season 3. So much so that Ashley Sharp Chestnut reached out and she wanted her figure, so I sent it to her, which is amazing. So they're all for sale. They're made to order, and they're on my Etsy shop. It's all through my socials. You can find it. And then I do little comedic I do stop animation comedic things with them. You'll appreciate the most recent episode was Troy was complaining how dark the Titan is because everything is filmed so dark, and Beverly's on a hunt for candles. Yeah, that's the joke in that one. But a lot of those still coming out. So in a non-Star Trek capacity, I should also say I have a Patreon where you get exclusive videos. You can help support the channel, and that's patreon.com/The Observation Lounge. Would love to have you. And then aside from that, you can find me at Jack Tracy Official on Instagram, where I do all my other stuff. I am a recording artist. I have a series called Danny Will Die Alone that comes out. It's an LGBTQ web series. I have a movie called Snowflake that's streaming on the Deku network. I do a lot of non-Star Trek creative stuff, so you can find me at Jack Tracy Official on Instagram for all of that.
Awesome. You are one busy guy, and I think I will have to be on your Etsy store to get me a Beverly Crusher figure. I actually think I might have seen it once and meant to do it and never got around to it. Do we have her there? Do we have her?
Well, that's Ro. She needs painted, but Ro's just about ready. And I have Shelby. She's just about ready. But no, I have the Beverly from episodes 1 and 2. Admiral Beverly is coming probably in a week. Leather jacket Beverly is coming in about a week. And then I have it ready to do episodes 3, 4, lab coat sweater. And then I'm going to get to the, I don't know what to call it, the fun jacket. The jagged fun jacket that she has in like 5 and 6. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of Beverly.
Beverly had all the looks in this show. And I just liked how after she kind of gets picked up by episode 1 or 2, she slowly goes from being this like Beverly on the run to turning back into Dr. Beverly Crusher. You see, at first she gets her badge back in a tricorder, and then suddenly she's got the long doctor's coat, and she just kind of morphs back into Starfleet Beverly and finishes up as an admiral. So I love her little like subliminal journey on top of the actual journey. At this time, we'd like to thank our associate producers, Davey Willett and Matt Harker. Hey, guys. If you would like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. And that's actually coming up this week, listeners. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages. So, Jack, thank you so much for joining me this week on What's the Tea, Bev. It's been a delight to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I will get you on Zhuzherations very soon. We're still in the early part of season 1, but we'll be getting there in the next month or so.
That sounds great, and I like that I can kind of know when it's coming. I've been listening along. In fact, I've got the next episode in the queue. I'll probably get to it tomorrow, actually, or Friday when I'm driving to Palm Springs. Nice. Thank you for listening, listeners, and we hope you'll join us next time for more tea on What's the Tea, Bev? Live long and prosper.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG. Hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Zilagis, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev? A Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have the Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark. And Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.